everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're looking at another Temu tattoo machine. This one's by the company JC KVM Tattoo. We've looked at one of their machines in the past and it fared up pretty well, so I'm quite interested to see how this machine performs. As usual, we'll do a time-lapse tattoo and then we'll return after to talk a little bit more in depth about the machine and how I think it performs. So with all that being said, let's jump on in. Okay, so now I've had a chance to use this tattoo machine, let's talk about some of the features and the performance of this machine. Now, to start with, this machine comes in its standard generic KVM JC tattoo box. It's got a one-size-fits-all foam insert and a USB-C cable, so there's no surprises there. The manual is a very generic, turn the machine on, tattoo correctly and turn it off. It doesn't really go into any more detail about that. Again, it's a generic packaging, so we wouldn't expect any specific details to this particular model. The machine itself is an all-metal design, with the exception of a plastic plate on the top of the battery, and I'm assuming that's more for dust protection rather than any type of structural integrity. Now, it's nice that the battery has a metal body in comparison to some of the cheaper tattoo machines that have a plastic body. So if you were to accidentally drop this tattoo machine, we've got less chance of damaging the battery, so that's a positive in that respect. The battery is held on by the standard spring-loaded ball bearing system, but I will say once it's secured in place, it's a fairly tight grip, so you're not going to be twisting or moving the battery without any deliberate force. The machine itself is weighted more to the front to the back, so this helps us maintain our natural tattooing position and helps the needles want to naturally fall more towards the skin, so we're not fighting against the weight of the machine. We've got a nice bright display on it and it's a fairly crisp readout. We've got all the information we need. We've got a battery level, a timer, whether it's in turbo, push start mode, the kick start mode, however you want to call it. It's got our voltages and our hertz. I will say though, I think the motor in this is rated at slightly higher RPM than other comparative machines, as if I wanted to get 80 hertz on some of the other cheaper machines, it was going somewhere around that 6 to 6.5 volt mark. On this one, it's getting at the 5.4 volt mark, which means potentially we could be tattooing the same result at less volts, which means potentially we've got less chance of causing overworking the skin. So that could be a bonus in that respect. So it's just something worth noticing. If you only ever work from voltages and not from hertz, you might find this needs to run a little bit lower on the voltage compared to other machines you might be used to. We've got our standard 2.4 to 4.2 dynamic adjustable stroke. And the click on it is substantial enough it's not going to accidentally adjust. It's just not the loudest click we've heard. We also have our standard click turn on our grip here, and it's a fairly stiff grip, and once again it's got that kind of muted click sound to it, but it's not going to accidentally adjust during the tattoo process. When it came to the tattooing process, I used 11 round liner for the lines and a 13 mag for the shading. And although it took me a couple of lines to get used to the performance of the machine, which is usual when you've never used a machine, once I'd got confident with that, there was no surprises with the quality of line. Everything was fairly consistent. As long as I maintained the same speed and hand depth, I was getting nice solid lines. When it came to the shading, I made a point of doing some backward shading and some forward shading just to see how it performed, because we can't always orientate the client to a more favourable position for our hand. We can do that with practice skin, but in real world it's not always going to be an option. And I did found the shading was better than I expected for a cheap tattoo machine. Although the last JC tattoo machine I reviewed kind of had the same pleasant surprise. This was a bit stronger. Now that might be down to the faster motor, but shading went in a lot easier with this machine than I was expecting it to compared to some of the other cheaper tattoo machines I've used. So on the actual tattooing process, there was nothing that jumped out as being unexpected. There was no quirks with it. Unlike some other cheap tattoo machines, it didn't drop power. It was fairly consistent, and I can say the machine itself didn't get any type of heat dissipation around the body of the machine at all. So that means the motor is less likely to be burnt out or to suffer any type of performance degradation over time, which can happen when the machine is running hot. As far as I'm led to believe, a hot motor can kill the life of the motor itself. So not having any heat dissipation on that was nice. So theoretically, we should be able to get some type of longevity out of this machine. So now we've spoke about the good parts of this machine, let's talk about the not so good parts. And realistically, it only comes down to 2 points that I really want to mention. First off, the battery is a very tight fit, so we have to use a fair bit of force to take it out. So you might feel on your first time that maybe it's hard fixed in and you don't want to pull too hard and break the machine, but it is a removable battery, so that's worth noting. The second point, now I did mention the ratchet in the dynamically adjustable stroke isn't the strongest we've seen in a tattoo machine. This does come down to now, if we've got our tattoo machine set up and we've got our needle facing the way we want it and it's to the stroke length that we like, if we want to reorientate the screen of the battery, it's very easy to turn the battery and adjust the stroke of the machine unintentionally. The second part of this also means we have the same problem if we want to adjust the throw of the needle through our grip. If we don't hold the bottom half of the ratchet system, we can then accidentally adjust the stroke of the machine, and we might find we do this unintentionally during the tattoo process. If we're trying to adjust whilst we're first doing a line on a client, getting used to their skin, for example, we might accidentally adjust the stroke and then not understand why the machine isn't working the way we intended. But these being the only two real points I can mention about this machine does bode well for it being a better machine than I expected at the price. So the last points to talk about are, would I recommend this machine and who I'd recommend it to? Now, considering this machine was only €25 delivered off Temu, it's not aiming to be a professional machine for you guys that are going to be doing 4, 5, 6 hours a day, day in, day out. I don't think it's got the lifespan and the reliability to do that, and we don't have the option to have the second battery, so that leads to the inherent problems of that. If, however, you are just learning to tattoo, or we're only practicing on tattoo skins, I do think this machine would be good for that. The price to get it is a relatively low price, so we haven't got a tremendous amount of financial entry to start learning, and it performed well enough on practice skins that we could quite easily start refining and learning different techniques on practice skins before we progressed on to a more expensive machine when we were more confident, and definitely before we started moving on to tattooing real skin on our clients. So with all that being said, what do you think of this review? Have you tried this machine, or would you be interested in trying this type of machine? As always, feel free to put any questions and comments down below, and I'll try to answer them the best I can. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.